Hi, this is Andy Scarborough with CrownWorks. Are you feeling creatively stuck? Do you feel uninspired even though maybe your full-time career is some form of making art? So sometimes we get trapped by the success of what we do, and the next thing you know, you're booked back to back and making great money, but not all that happy. Today I want to talk a little bit about creative burnout and how to keep that muse happy and alive. Hairdressers are in a unique field, much like graphic designers, where we can almost get away with saying that we have 9-to-5 jobs. It really is such a privilege to be able to use these hands to make art and make regular money. There's a whole myth about the starving artist and the glorification of that, but my industry as a hairdresser, I feel like we're really defying those odds. Still, it's been my experience that like any creative profession, there are so many conversations going on about how to get to where you're going and how to be successful that nobody is really talking about what to do once you get there and the problems that show up with that too. Like how to say no and how to still be silly and frivolous and find the time to just be creatively indulgent with yourself, even though you're maybe booked solid and making good money. So my favorite author, Neil Gaiman, did a college commencement speech called Make Good Art. I could not recommend it more. It's 20 minutes that will change your life. The man is so wise. I think I've listened to it probably 100 times. And when I first heard it versus when I hear it now, you know, it's one of those things, like a good book, that every time you read it, the message is slightly different. And recently when I was listening to the speech again, I really heard what he was talking about when he discussed some of the problems of success. Now, when you're starting out in any kind of creative field, like there's all kinds of guides and websites and social media hacks that tell you how to get noticed and how to get busy, and whole programs for salons or other creative professionals that are telling you how to get clients and how to get paid and how to pre-bill and invoice and all of these business things to get you to a point of creative busyness where you're profitable with your art. No one's really talking about what to do or the problems that may happen once you're there. Issues like compassion fatigue that I've talked about in my previous videos, or creative burnout, or just kind of an overstimulation, especially if you're a sort of energetically sensitive person, which I believe a lot of hairdressers are, just can create in a level of deep, either emotional or mental exhaustion that can just not leave a lot of room for creative inspiration. And let's face it, you know, when you're booked back to back, that beautiful rainbow unicorn hair that I see all over social media is the envy of my life. Because even if someone were to sit down in my chair and say, I want that today, I couldn't do it. I'd be too booked up. So how do we find time for those kind of creative indulgences in the middle of a busy day? When you've experienced some level of success, there's kind of an old story about being braggy or not being humble, or even worse, being ungrateful for what you have if you have any kind of sense of unhappiness about it. And so I think that there's a lot of times that we just sort of go plugging merrily along, driving ourselves further and further into the ground because we're so aware of stylists in the salon that maybe aren't as busy as they want to be, or other creative types that are in our circles where, you know, they would kill to have the kind of steady income that we do. And while we can certainly practice gratitude for that, there's something that has to be fed on a sort of spirit or soul level in order to sustain that. Sometimes I have felt like our work, while I love it, and I love the regularity of those root retouches every 2 to 4 weeks, being booked with that kind of service all the time is something that's really pushed in our industry. You know, you want regulars, you want repeats, you want like your 3-weekers or your bread and butter. your weekly blow dries are your bread and butter, and they most certainly are. And that's a brilliant business practice when you're building your clientele. But once you get to a point of being busy, and there are some business coaching models that will then have you double or even triple booked in, color on, color off, blow dry, and off you go. And the next thing you know, you've had a fantastic dollar amount day, but you are leaving the salon with a level of physical and emotional exhaustion and zero creative satisfaction. If we imagine feeding our creativity like feeding ourselves nutritionally, that kind of back-to-back machine style work, especially for that like wildly creative artist inside you that wanted you to get into that work in the first place, is like trying to tell them to survive on power bars. You'll live, like vitamin nutrient quality will sustain you, but it's just that. You can wake up wildly successful and reaching your monetary goals, but really feeling spiritually and emotionally depleted. And that happens because basically while you were surviving on the equivalent of creative power bars, your muse or that creative child inside you that really wanted to do this hair painting, hair sculpting gig so that it would be fun and you could make rainbow hair, is starving to death. So how do we feed them? The first is making creative white space on your calendar. No matter how far out you work on your calendar, building that creative white space in there is imperative. And here's the trick: make it non-negotiable. Like as non-negotiable as your mom's birthday dinner. That creative white space, that unspoken for time, is really like the most fertile ground for your creative self. Like think about the way that you invented when you were a kid, right? Like the wild stories you wrote or adventures that you had came when you were bored, when there wasn't something going on or some activity to do. So I know this sounds crazy, but schedule time for yourself to get bored. It is your creative aspects, like favorite thing is to be bored. That creative white space on your calendar, it's a day that you're doodling, it's a day that you're playing with your sister's hair. It's a day to just get bored and let your mind wander. We're so overstimulated that sometimes it's hard to even like have the space to have an idea. So when we let ourselves get good and bored, that there's nothing else we have to do, you will be amazed at the ideas that come to you. Whether they're for, maybe a creative photo shoot, for some crazy hair looks that you've wanted to try, but look so time consuming and not something you want to try in the middle of the day. Make that time for yourself. Buy a mannequin head, buy some watercolors, play. Another point on scheduling that I wanted to share with you is a personal journey that I've taken over the last couple of years. About 2 years ago, I took a big risk and chose to raise my prices, and I hadn't in 6 years, right? So I was due. But I raised them substantially. So when I sent out the letter to my clients telling them about this price increase, one of the things I told them I was offering them of added value for my regular, say, haircut time was more time. I elongated my appointment times. Now I know this can be really contrary to a lot of the business trainings that we have, but a lot of those opportunities to teach a client something or to really connect with them is born out of having a few extra minutes together. And as an industry, we've been sort of tightening and delegating finishing to an assistant, which, don't get me wrong, I work with an assistant. I love you, Maria. I love you. But sometimes it's really important for me to have that extra moment with a client and connect with them more deeply, or have a chance to play with their hair a little bit, show them how to do a really fun wavy style, or do a cool braid because we have a couple extra minutes. Not only is that deepening the relationship that we have, but there's also that little girl inside me that got into hairdressing because I was the girl doing all the makeovers at slumber parties. And I really want to be that girl every chance I get, because that girl is the one who's been doing this for 15 years. And she's been really, really tolerant of my slinging power bars at her in lieu of creative play. So if any of this is resonating with you and you're really feeling like you want to connect with your inner creativity on a deeper level, there are a couple life-changing, game-changing books that I've read or am reading right now. One is Liz Gilbert's Big Magic. I think she does workshops as well. It's totally transformed the relationship that I have with my creativity. And some of my writing projects, or even these videos, for instance, are something that even a year ago I don't think that I would have done, because that old approval addict, right, that perfection addiction, would have kicked up again and told me, well, if it's not going to be perfect, then you just shouldn't bother to do it. But the truth is, it makes me so happy and I have so much fun, and it really doesn't matter if anybody watches these videos at all. But this is a dream of mine that I'm fulfilling, and it feels really good just to be creating. And that's the thing, to create without attachment. You know, she said in that book, and I thought it was so incredible, that she made a vow to her younger self that she would never hold her writing accountable for her livelihood. Now, I'm sure that, you know, now her writing is her livelihood, right? It's not like she's got a desk job that she's doing in the meantime, but it's sort of the same thing for us, you know? I wonder how she's managed those elements of success and what's come up for her and what she might identify as the problems of success. So, Liz Gilbert, if you're watching this and you would like to maybe send me a video message back, that would be awesome. Love Big Magic. It's great. There was a great book that I read a couple of years ago called Crazy Busy, and it was about this psychotherapist who treated adult ADHD. And people came to him and said, I think I have ADHD. And he said, no, you're an adult in these times. You're vastly overstimulated. So when he talked about how we as adults now put ourselves into this like task-oriented grind, he basically talked about taking the creative part of your brain, the cerebellum, which is, I think he compared to a concert pianist, right? And asking that artist to clean toilets. Like, he can do it, but he's gonna do a shit job of it, and he's not gonna be happy about it. So finding some proper employment of that problem-solving creative part of your brain. So Big Magic has definitely been a game changer for me, just to get out from the attachment to the outcome of why we're creating, or needing to be the best or most perfect at it in order to get it done. Like, play with your client, do a braid. Who cares if you don't know how to braid? Who cares if it's a silly braid? That silliness, you all, like silliness, frivolity. My dear friend Veronica Christo, I joke every single time I see her that frivolity is the greatest commodity, right? Laughter is such a gift. And we know, like, medical journals talk about how it's such great medicine, but we won't do it. Like, we won't give ourselves time to laugh, or we say we're too busy for silly things like learning to paint or playing a drum. And who cares if you're not any good at it? But if there's some aspect of you that just wants to do something silly, like, for real, you guys, I went into the fabric store the other day and bought like 3 rolls of rainbow duct tape. I have no idea what I'm gonna do with them. But that part of me like really wanted to have them. And I don't know, maybe I'll like talk to my niece and figure out how to make those duct tape wallets, but I wanted it. And it felt really good to satisfy that. And as a result, I came back and felt like I had a much more deeper connected week with my clients, even if nothing else had changed in those appointments. But elongating my appointment times really gave me time too, that if someone wanted to come in and have rainbow hair per se, then suddenly I had maybe an opportunity to do it. Or if it wasn't a full rainbow experience, then maybe I could like teal dip some ends. And that felt really, really good. You know, there's a reason why hairdressers that have been in the industry a long time get stuck. is because they've been so successful, right? There's no call for them to change. And quite literally 10 years goes by and you're doing the same base retouch and the same haircut and nobody's complaining and you're making great money, but very, very slowly that creative muscle is going into atrophy. And suddenly you look up and you're burned out and you're miserable because you let the success of it block you from that thing you do, which is being creative and experimenting and being a problem solver. And the last bit is have fun. Do something ridiculous, right? Like buy a bunch of little safari animals and set up a terrarium in your living room. You know, like those little plastic ones from the 99-cent store. I was blown away to read that Albert Einstein played the violin. You know, there's something about stretching into a creative expression that has no pressure on it that quite literally resuscitates that creative essence inside you. If you need deep fuel, be silly. If you want to go far creatively and have a rich and rewarding and ever-evolving career, be frivolous. Be frivolous with your time. Schedule days to be bored on your calendar and stretch out your time with your clients. When you carve out time in your workday to be playful, suddenly it's going to be 25 or 30 years from now and you're going to have a lifetime of a hairdressing career and be thrilled about it and honestly never have felt like it was work, not even for a day. So get out there, do something crazy, buy duct tape, buy watercolors from the 99-cent store, book yourself a Saturday and leave your phone at home and go sit in the park. Doodle in the dirt, make a flower crown, do anything that's gonna just stimulate and resuscitate that creative urge. Because if you're unhappy or you're feeling burned out, then that's your emotional guidance system telling you that that younger, more carefree, more irreverent version of yourself is really needing some quality time. And believe it or not, that's the way to maintain your success. Get serious about getting silly. If you've liked what you've seen, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at crown_works.